Hello, everyone. This is Vinod here, your host for today's session of CRO Talk Series. Over the last couple of seasons, we've heard various leaders across the revenue portfolio, right from investors, sales heads, product leaders, talk about how they've grown revenues. With the third season of CRO Talk, we are now also switching gears and getting more detailed because a lot of listeners told us they want to get into the brass tacks of how revenue growth is achieved. For today's conversation, our guest for the day is Emilia. Emilia is a highly successful sales leader with 25 years of experience spearheading some of the industry's most respected enterprise organizations. From startups like Portal Software, TOA Technologies to large global organizations like SAP, Nokia, and Oracle, Emilia has a proven track record of leading GTM teams, go-to-market teams, to deliver significant growth. Her focus and drive, combined with a highly personable style, have enabled her consistently to exceed her revenue goals, build sales strategies, and build and empower the large sales teams that she manages. Currently, Emilia is the Chief Revenue Officer for Platform9 Systems, where she is responsible for all of GTM, including sales and marketing. Emilia, a very warm welcome to the CRO Talk series.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Let's get started quickly on this. Maybe could you just give us a brief overview of what Platform9 is and the company itself, just for our audience?
Sure. So Platform9 is a company that is focused on democratizing cloud computing, which basically means making cloud computing available to everyone. And in this world, cloud computing is very, very complex. And what the original idea of Platform9 was to bring the agility of the cloud into the private cloud data centers. And because it was very complex, we created a management plane, basically a Kubernetes and an OpenStack infrastructure as a service. To make that available to everybody so they could just consume those cloud infrastructure layers as a service so they can focus on developing their applications. Data scientists can focus on working on their models and learning and inferencing and so on, and just focus on those upper level applications that generate revenue for them, and we will take care of all the infrastructure as a service components.
Wonderful. I think that's right in the heart of all the growth that's happening on the internet and a lot of exciting things happening there as well. Getting to the CRO talk itself, Emilia, you worked with small, medium, and big organizations during your career. And one of the key questions that came to us from the last season from some of our audiences, what does it take to be a successful CRO in a high growth, fast paced, smaller organization compared to being in one of the big firms? How have you recalibrated yourself and changed the way you operate to make it work with Platform9 and the other smaller companies versus the big ones that you worked with in the past?
Yeah, that's such a great question. I've worked with small, big, so I've bounced around between them, and there's definitely a difference. The biggest difference working in a startup environment versus a large enterprise is related to pace, agility, and breadth of activity. In a startup environment, it's definitely all hands on deck. It's definitely a lot more scrappy. There's way more hurdles involved, way more hustle every single day. And in a startup environment, you got to create, you got to shift on the fly, you've got to make decisions, more decisions every day than in a larger enterprise. And you've got to question things quickly. So you've got to fail fast, meaning when you try something, you can't keep investing in that if it's not working. So you've got to be very agile. And because of that agility, leadership is paramount because you need to shift your team quickly. And so it can be demoralizing to a team if we're on a track and then we shift a little. Now, I'm not suggesting that you shift and change all the time because you've got to have some stability. The ultimate goal is to get to stability. The ultimate goal is to get to predictable long-term revenue, those sorts of things. So you've got to have a strategy that works. You can't keep shifting all the time. But the main thing is that it's a much more agile, much more hands-on deck environment. And so you've got to encourage people to be creative, but at the same time, you've got to balance keeping people in their lanes. So it's an interesting tension because what you'll find is that, someone who's responsible for an area has a lot of opinions about someone else's area of responsibility, and we encourage that, but there's got to be a point in time where you've got to get back in your own lane and focus on the things that are important for delivering your piece. So keeping the team motivated, you've got to hire people with a self-motivated, self-initiative. You can't be micromanaging people that you just don't have the time. There's just too much going on at any one time. In a large enterprise, it's a much more steady state, much more established environment. You spend more time in the processes, to be honest, and you have a lot more people in support roles and admin roles, and roles are more pigeonholed to one particular or a smaller number of particular areas. So there's a much more steady state. And you're leveraging often customer incumbency. You're leveraging relationships that have been there for many, many years, as an example, as a customer relationships. The startup environment, no one knows you, no one knows your brand. You've got to hustle so much more, and it's just it's a hunter style of dynamic, whereas in a large enterprise, you have your hunters, but you definitely have your farmers, and it's about keeping your customers happy and growing them, whereas in a startup, it's finding net new customers so much more. I mean, you got to have both in both startup and enterprise, but in the startup world, of course, it's predominantly net new logos that you're trying to get.
I had a sort of a quick question on the culture that needs to come in, right? You did mention, and we are a startup as well at Markets and Markets, and we know how difficult it is to find people who have that initiative.
Right.
And you rightly said that, yes, you need people who can take that initiative day on day, not wait for decisions to come from the top.
Right.
How do you find that out in the course of one or two interviews? What's your secret sauce there?
Oh, that's such a great question. So I've fine-tuned my interview questions, and I've fine-tuned my interviewing process too. I personally spend a lot of time asking people questions that highlight their personality, highlight their ability to take risks, their desire to take risks, their ability to have a strong point of view, their ability to fight. So I ask questions that kind of get a little bit more into the psychology of a person. And they're always such great conversations that I have. And then there's another phase of interviews where you need to look at the skill sets that they have, but you've got to really get the right psyche, because a lot of the things that you need in a startup are not necessarily learned skills. They're part of a personality, or part of someone's personality based on the phase of the life they're in. So, someone who's willing to take more risks and so on. So yeah, I have a process where I ask a lot of questions around that.
Wonderful. Yeah, I think that gives us some sense. And at Markets and Markets, we've been trying to focus on skills and as the foundation layer, saying that these people need to bring in two, three skills, plus, of course, demonstrate a scrappy mindset. In
Right,
their
right.
past, they should have done something which demonstrates that they're willing to take initiative. Absolutely, that's very helpful, Emilia. And what about big companies? Since we have a lot of audience who are going to be looking at how what it takes to succeed in a large firm, and a large firm, I've worked at large brands as well, and it's always about staying in the swim lane a lot of times, making sure that you're doing your part of the job, while at the
Mhm.
same time shoring up parts of your extended organization which need help. So that's
Yeah.
usually the model which works. What's your experience been with large firms?
Again, you've got to have strong leadership. Um, I used I would have spent a lot of time saying I've got to take the toys off the, that toy's not yours today. Give it back to the right person. Making sure that they are swimming in their lanes, yes, but you there's a lot more people that you're dealing with. You're dealing with lots of different departments. It's often a very matrix organization. So the leadership in that case is to help bring people around a common cause and not feel like their lane is the only world that exists. So I've always spent a lot of time having helping the whole team understand the bigger problem that we're trying to solve, and the outcomes that we're trying to solve together. And so there's a lot of cross-department interaction. So the leadership is a little different. It's not one of agility where you're quickly shifting and making people understand the new directions or the new approach or so on. It's more about teamwork and actually getting a more harmonious approach to that work. So that's the main difference. It doesn't sound a lot different in words, but in practice, it's actually very different.
Absolutely, absolutely. Another aspect, and specifically coming from a startup space, is the need for investors. A lot of firms love to be bootstrapped and run off their own finances, but
Yeah.
given that the whole world is trying to accelerate growth and all your competitors are probably going in for investment, it creates that FOMO on the founders to also seek investment and accelerate their growth path.
Yeah.
The last season of CRO Talk, we had an investor coming in and talking about how he chooses companies to invest in for growth and what is his criteria for that. I would be
Yeah.
curious to hear from you, Emilia, the counter perspective, which is how do you and the Platform 9 leadership team or a startup leadership team think about what should be the um, key things that an investor gives you
Mm-hmm.
to get your
Yeah.
investment in them?
Yeah, look, that's such a good question. It's a really interesting topic because you've got to balance your customer needs and your go-to-market requirements with the investor expectations. Ideally, those things align. If you do a really good job of creating your business plan and your marketing plan, the basics really. You've got to define your existence, your DNA, the product market fit, all those things, your niches, all those basic things. Ultimately, that's what your investors buying into. They believe your plan and they believe in your vision and mission, and they believe that you are capable of achieving that. So if the plan is sound, then there's an alignment there, and that works really nicely. Now, in the real world, because your business plan is often based on a number of hypotheses that either are well tested or not, not everything is going to be well tested. There's a lot of you've got to make some decisions based on some hypotheses and gut feel too. There may be some adjustments that need to be made. And you've got to face those real world situations, and you've got to adjust to the new information. You've got to reassess your assumptions, and you may need to course correct. And there's some examples of that. So at one end, you may find that you've met with an incredible opportunity that wasn't actually 100% in alignment with the goal, but you've realized that there is a massive opportunity here, and you've got to make a choice. Are we going to get out of our lane a little to address this opportunity? If so, how? What is the plan to do that? What is the investment required to do that? And you've got to build a business plan around that as well. Do you take that opportunity, or do you stay true to your absolute core, and this is the plan and this is what we're going to do? And you've got to make some choices around that. And there's no right or wrong, depending on the DNA of your company and what your ultimate mission and vision is. On the other hand, you may find that your plan's not quite working for some reason. Something may happen, like COVID hitting the world, that changed a lot of people's plans. You may find that a competitor was able to scale much faster than you and got the first to market advantage. So on the negative side, you may learn things on the negative side. So how are you going to address that? So because these real world situations occur, your plan may be slightly different to what you originally presented to the board and your investors, and you just have to have a very close and agile working relationship with them and allow them to be part of your decision making and talk about the risks involved and so on. So if you have that relationship, you actually should get a lot of really good advice from your investors. So if you treat your investors as part of the team, that's the utopia, right? Your investors should have a lot of experience with the market. They're dealing with a lot of companies day in, day out. They can see what's working, what's not working. They can see the greater trends and patterns that are taking place. And you need to be in a place where you have a sense of trust, and that their advice actually is valuable to you. And I also think that the investors should be very proactive about promoting you as a company, promoting through their network. They have an extensive network of influence, and they should be helping you hire people. They should be helping you with introductions to other businesses that you can do business with, etc. So it's a partnership. It's a full-blown partnership, and their DNA needs to match yours.
Just shifting gears on getting back into the field and the go-to-market planning. Startups typically, and you mentioned this, the pace at which the organization changes is quite rapid, and a lot of times it's always all hands on deck. You need to shift gears today, and then the action needs to start showing in the pipeline tomorrow. So what's your experience with this? How often have you seen that the go-to-market plan needs to be changed, or the go-to-market strategy itself needs to be changed?
Sure.
What's the pace at which this happens? What elements of GTM go through a change at what frequency?
Yeah. So look, in the end, the goal is to achieve a degree of steady state. You wanna see growth. Are you doing triple, double, whatever it is? You got to have your ideal for growth. But in the end, you want to have a steady state, meaning I don't mean linear growth, but I mean patterns that you can predict against, right? So you can see the performance, it's predictable, your pipeline is robust, there are repeatable components. That's the whole idea. It's got to be repeatable to scale. So that's the ultimate goal, but at the same time, as you're achieving steady state, you've got to have innovation. taking place constantly. So part of your, I guess, your pipeline, part of your business will be a little more steady state, and part of it will be innovative. And so you have different maturity curve components. So obviously at the early part of your maturity curve, there's a lot of agility required there. You've got to test a number of things. There's a lot of components that are unpredictable, and as you learn, you fine tune. As a product line, for example, becomes a little more mature and you have more predictability on that revenue, it doesn't change as much. It doesn't need to change as much. You've established a position in the market, for example. You've established credibility and so on. So you're not going to see as much change required there. You see a lot more change at the beginning. But there are things you may want to do. You may want to enhance your profile in the market. Do you rebrand? Do you add something to the brand? Do you do a lightning strike launch on a new product? Those sorts of things. You've got to. So I guess what I'm saying is there's no one answer. It depends on what component, which product you have, where it is on the maturity cycle, and you've got to be innovating. You can't just have one thing because it approaches maturity at some stage, and that's you've got to keep innovating. So you're going to have lots of components with lots of different dynamics. But as a startup, like I said, there's a lot more learning. You're on the early part of the curve. You're on the embryonic, perhaps, or unknown from a brand perspective. You've got a lot of changes that you have to make constantly.
Yeah. One frequent question that keeps coming up for even us, right? You successfully taken accounts from a smaller revenue base to maybe mid 6 digits, sometimes even a 7-digit revenue stream. And you see that to get to the next bump, which is maybe another 2x to 5x bump, getting to, let's say, mid 7 digits or even an 8-digit annual revenue from an account, the whole playbook needs to change. And it's not just about adding a product line. It is not just about making an acquisition. The whole DNA seems to require a shift. How do you navigate that midstream? Because there's always the investor pressure, and probably at this point, you're also on the path to getting to an IPO. So you want to show that steady ticker over at least 8 to 12 quarters. So how do you navigate this need for constant growth with the need to shift gears at a very crucial point in the company?
That's a really good question. So look, once you've established your customer base and you've got your steady ARR coming in, that needs to grow. And there's potential growth within your customer. So you've already kind of dealt with that customer acquisition cost, and it's all about customer success and helping your customers grow their business. And so you're going to see the expansion revenues coming from there. But you always need net new revenue. So where does that net new revenue come from? It comes from expanding your existing product into the market, into new logos, but it also comes from new innovations, addressing the market need. So for us at Platform9, for example, we made a deliberate choice that we're going to have a team that is focused on net new revenue, and we're going to have a team very separate, focused on renewals and customer account management. For a period of time. There was a period of time where the account managers and the salespeople were one pool, and they combined the effort of looking after the accounts and net new logos. And that worked for a time, but we had to we decided we had a number one focus on net new logos, and so we bifurcated the team very deliberately, because it's very easy to look after your customers. There's always something to do. It's a lot harder to go after net new. So I think it's all about trying to understand what is the goal that you're trying to achieve? What is the behavior that is required to achieve those goals, and then setting up your team structures around that, ensuring that there's KPIs for those outcomes. And I think it's the focus on what you want achieved. And like I said, bifurcating teams to have the focus on those areas that you need. It's never one thing. You've got to have a mixture of things, but you've got to have the focus in the right areas, and you've got to have areas of focus.
Yeah, I completely know what you're saying, Emilia. Even within our company, we went from having a pure hunting organization at one point to creating a customer success client servicing team. And then we also realized that the client servicing team is not the best at hunting. And I'll tell you what I mean by that. In a large organization, if you created a footprint in, let's say, the North American market, and specifically, let's say, their business in the US, that does not naturally translate to a sale in a Canada or a UK or a France. Those are still hunting sales.
Right.
So what we have done is we've created this hybrid organization where the install base focuses on accounts, but they are focused on the buying centers that are already with us. And then for the new buying centers, we go after through the hunting organization. That seems to be giving us much better results versus sort of dedicating the account.
Yeah, I agree. You can't ignore one or the other. They're both extremely important. Your customer satisfaction is your lifeblood. Without your customers being satisfied, you don't have good testimonials, you don't have good organic growth, all those sorts of things. And that's why you exist. You exist to service your customers. So you have to do that well, but you have to grow. Especially in a startup, right? That's all about growth and achieving your 3x, 2x, whatever curve you're trying to achieve. And they're very different skills. And what I've found is actually if you mix them, if you mix account management and net new logo hunting sales, 100% of the time in my experience is that the hunting declines and the account management effort starts to take over, because your customers, there's something going on. They've always want something, positive or negative, but there's always something to do with your existing customers. And it's easy and it's often enjoyable, right? Going after net new, that's hard work. You've got to create something out of nothing, right? And if you've got other things to spend your time on, it's easier to do that. So I've personally found that bifurcating those teams works, but there are times where you need to have one person do both for certain reasons. There may be some relationship things in place, some dynamics, whatever it is. But that's been my experience.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think the outcome is always the same: increase in revenue and maybe improvement in margins as well at some point in the growth. But the paths to achieving that are so varied. I was speaking with the CRO of another company, which has already gone public. I think their valuation is already about $10 billion, but their average ticket size is still $40,000 per account. So he said, we don't see the need to scale. We are happy with these ticket sizes. All we need is more clients. And the more and more clients we win on our platform, the platform becomes smarter and it does well for everyone. So their motto is just win more clients. Don't think about the ticket size per account. We are happy just picking up a $45,000 ticket per account.
Right.
And on the other side, there's a lot of companies which say, if I have to grow, I have to take a 40,000 account to a 500,000, and then that 500,000 to 5 to 10 million. Yeah, and it's hard to say which one scales better. But if you're in a fast-paced business, maybe you want to fix on the $40,000 thing. Don't focus on strategy because your client is running away faster than you can build your team to service that.
Right.
But if you're in a business that has the ability to breathe a bit and
Right.
gives you that lead time, then yes, definitely go after building the big accounts.
Well, here's the thing, the big strategic deals are just, they take longer. Okay, that's just the reality. You're solving a bigger problem. There's a lot more people in the buying community. You've got to talk to a lot more people. You've got to address more issues. And often you've got to address a bigger problem. So does that solution that you're selling, is it a point solution that addresses one thing really, really well? Or does it provide the bigger picture? And you've got to, the DNA of your company will dictate whether you're in the game of providing the bigger problem because you've got multiple components that you can bring together to solve the bigger problem, whether it's multiple products that integrate together, whether it's consulting services that tie it all together and so on. That's a different company to one that's selling a point product, a best of breed component. And enterprises, I've found in general, large enterprises want one throat to choke. And so if you want to become that company that does multi-million-dollar deals as a norm, you need to solve a bigger problem. And you need to figure out how to become that one throat to choke, whether it's you do that or you partner and have one of the partners as the throat to choke. But you've got to figure out how to solve the bigger problem because you have to solve it for more people. So that's a learning that I've come. There's not, lots and lots and lots of $40,000 deals is great. What's nothing wrong with that. And your smaller deal sizes are faster. There's more volume. That's a way of scaling. It's just you're scaling with volume. There's no right or wrong. It's just figuring out if you want to be an enterprise, a large enterprise customers, then you've got to make sure that your DNA is actually solving the problem that they have versus a point solution.
Absolutely. I think it's about taking the customer first perspective. What is it the clients are trying to solve for? And being the solution to that problem that is maybe relevant across industries or across geographies. Absolutely. Yeah, and yeah, I think it's always refreshing to hear that yes, there are different ways to achieve that growth, different ways to achieve that valuation number. Even if the paths are very different, you still achieve your same outcome.
Yeah.
And I had one other question to cover, Emilia, and this maybe takes us a bit of a step back in the discussion. We've started at the strategic level, looking at investor choices, getting down into the GTM. How do you decide on one versus the other? A lot of startups that we work with are constantly looking for validation. You mentioned the product market fit. You mentioned TAM, SAM. So how do you think a startup should go about defining the total addressable market, the serviceable market for their products? Is it faster for them to partner with firms like us? Markets and Markets does all of this, of course. Or do you think they need to take their own approach to defining the TAM and SAM for their portfolio? What's faster and what's more value for money?
I personally think that identifying your TAM is an exercise at looking at numerous sources. I think if you can work with a market and markets, they do a lot of the work for you. You're outsourcing a lot of work to someone like yourselves to do it, and that's a great way of doing it. I think it's important to cross-reference the data and collate the data and analyze the data from different sources. It's not an exact science. There's so much inferencing that needs to take place. And the more data, the more granular the data, the better. And I don't mean in general, I mean the more granular the data in the very specific area that you need to look at. I find that a lot of the data from companies like Market and Markets are fabulous to a certain point, and then the inferencing to get to the granularity doesn't always produce the accuracy that you're looking for. But sometimes it does. So you've got to know exactly what it is that you're looking for. And I think you need to augment the data from different sources. You got to look at the firmographics, the technographics, the economics, adoption rates, maturity rates. There's so many things that you could look at. And you may not actually, if you're looking for a specific answer, it might not be give me the answer to that specific question. You may be able to infer that by asking different questions. And that's why I say it's probably a good idea to look at numerous sources, but it's very time consuming. The more data you can get from actually having conversations with the real world about it rather than just data is helpful as well. So I would say if there's budget to engage someone like a Market and Markets, I would say it's a no-brainer to do that. And I would say that there would probably need to be some augmentation around that as well.
Yeah, what you said is very aligned to how we are seeing clients respond to us as well, Emilia.
Yeah.
While most companies first reach us through our syndicate content, and as you said, they are limiting content because they are syndicate by nature and they are only able to give one level of detail. So if you look at our fastest growing business today, it's our advisory, because clients are drilling down, as you said, they want the most granular level of data possible. They want to do voice of customer studies. They want to make sure that 10 million investment or 50 million investment they are making in is on the right area. Whether it's a startup or a large company, 8-digit, 9-digit investment demands that time and effort. So we do go downstream, not just helping them with the initial assessment and direction, but also work with them in an advisory model, a retainer model, where we stick with them through the journey of revenue realization, so that they don't just see where the TAM is, they also start figuring out accounts, they start figuring out where the money can come from, and we are part of that entire journey with them. It's been a natural growth for us.
Yeah, look, it's really important that partnering with someone like an M&M is exactly what you've said. It's a relationship. It's not just here's some data, good luck with it. There's so much iteration required in the process, because as you learn from the data and from the information that you guys are gathering on behalf of us, it opens up new questions. It challenges some of your assumptions. You may think I can get that specificity this way, and you go, actually, it's not working that way. We need to go in a different direction to get to that. And with ABM being a lot more, favorable these days, it's, you really need to be very, very targeted, and you need to have very, very good information, because your marketing dollar, it's so hard to get that marketing dollar to generate results. So the more targeted you can be with the specificity, the better. But it requires having an actual working relationship with someone like yourself, where you guys are augmenting the go-to-market teams and learning together. I don't think it's a one and done thing. I don't think that really works.
Yeah, I love the part about learning together. I think that's the journey we are in as well. And the more time we spend with our clients, the more we understand them, and it becomes a virtuous cycle for both the companies. I mean, any final comments before we conclude the Emilia podcast today?
No, you've asked a lot of fantastic questions, and there's there's a lot of learning, there's a lot of evolving. The markets are changing constantly. I mean, it's an exciting space to be in them at all. So thank you for your time. Thank you for asking such great questions. I've enjoyed the conversation.
Same here, absolutely. And I hope our viewers as well found this conversation interesting. We've tried to go down into the details this season, as has been the request from many of you. And we'll be coming up with more content. Thanks again, Emilia.